There's so many different kinds of edits that you can do, and I think we weren't sure what exactly the model was going to pick up on, but it actually is very versatile. We have an amazing group of people who have been making demos for the past couple of weeks. And I've been really blown away with all the kinds of things that they have been able to do, of turning themselves into crochet dolls and liquefying things, and those things, and they just work, and it's all through prompting, which is pretty incredible.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Release Notes. My name is Logan Kilpatrick. I'm on the Google DeepMind team. Today, I'm joined by Nicole, Dumi, Gabe, Shlomi. We're talking about the new Omni model, Gemini Omni. So maybe one of you want to sort of kick us off with the high-level news about the model?
We're really excited to introduce Gemini Omni. I think there's two things that people should take away from this model. One is we're basically bringing Nano Banana to video. So we have a really great video generation model, but it especially shines at video editing. And the second thing, the reason we're calling it Omni, is it's really the next step towards the journey of making Gemini fully multimodal in and multimodal out. So you can take in image, video, audio, input references, and right now, good video as output. And then, in the future, we will be adding more modalities as a way to make Gemini fully multimodal in and out.
I love it. I feel like we've been telling the sort of Gemini multimodal input story. It was sort of like a foundational part of the original Gemini models. And then obviously the whole suite of from Nano Banana to VO to some of the music and audio models, sort of state of the art across the rest of the Gen Media portfolio. So it's exciting to see it all come together. Maybe we look at demos and see, and we can do some live reactions.
Let's go to some examples. Let's play this one. So this is actually a really nice example of bringing together sort of the Gemini world knowledge with media generation. And so this is literally asking the model to generate the alphabet and then examples of an object for each letter of the alphabet.
Nice, nice. And this sort of how aware is the model of its own? Because I imagine there's like a time constraint of how much generation the model can do. Is it aware of its own time? Is the speed sequence? Do we have to sort of prompt the model to be make sure to do it fast because you only have 8 seconds to generate, or how much of that context is?
I think that's one of the things that's really improved on is that the model has an ability to create very fast, potentially sequences. So unlike previous generations of models, the control over the time and being able to tell a story is much better. This is a bit of an extreme kind of situation where you want to create very fast frames that go one after the other. Each one has different content and there is a specific order. So the model is very aware temporally where everything should go. And basically when the user asks for a relatively kind of complex sequence, then the model is able to reason about it and create the sequence correctly.
To your question about the sort of, do you have to prompt it? You can, but you don't have to. It's pretty flexible in that sense. You can just say, well, I do it in 10 seconds and it will do it.
Yeah.
But you can also specify well, I want it to be slow-mo, whatever it is that you want it to. So it's pretty controllable in that sense.
Part of that comes from the conditioning. So there's this text conditioning that goes into the model. Should it be fast-paced? Should it be really slow? But then another part of it is just from the model itself. It really looks to find these correlations between what you're asking for and how the video should look.
Yeah, I love it. There's an AI video speed. That first example is cool to see that it is a lot faster paced than sort of what you would normally get out of a sort of an AI video generator, which is cool.
And this one's very fast-paced, and we prompted it to be very fast-paced to fit the alphabet in. But we have another example, which goes into the editing capabilities and also the anything in, because we're using an image as input and a video as input. So let's play a video of this woman talking.
Well, I don't know what it is, but today is going to be a good day. I can feel it.
This is Irina, one of our amazing creators of the Greenfield team. And then the prompt is basically, turn me into this animal.
Well, I don't know what it is, but today is going to be a good day. I can feel it.
That's awesome. Just to draw it back to sort of folks who have some familiarity with the VO models, this is sort of a combination of reference to video, audio, and the part that wasn't possible before is the audio consistency. Because like you could do sort of editing like that with previous VO generations, right? With like reference to video, or no, or is that not
You could do
possible?
reference to video where the reference was an image or an audio clip, but video editing is a net new thing
Nice.
that we're bringing with Omni, and that's why we like to use the reference of it's kind of like Nano Banana for video, because we're basically combining everything that we had in VO, hence also Omni, and we're adding video editing, and it's really nice because with Gemini, in the loop again, because we're building on Gemini, you can use fairly simple language, right? Like literally turn me into this animal. There's nothing that complex in the prompt, and then the model just does it, and then it keeps the voice the same, and it keeps the speech the same, which is really nice.
Yeah, we pretty much build them all from the ground up to be able to understand different modalities. So in this case, the image and the video, so it can actually know what information it has to take from the source, or in this case, the reference video, which a person is talking, and recontextualize it, in this case, as an animal talking. But the small movements, the expressions of the animal kind of transfer from the original person. And that's, I think, really like those nuances make it look better.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, is that while Veo could certainly do reference to video, that was a capability that we kind of like almost layered into it. Whereas this is, with Omni, it's really a step change. It's like, we started from the foundation. We kind of had to rethink how to build this model from the ground up. And we're really happy with the results because of that.
Maybe pragmatically also, like it actually does improve, the quality improves with more references that you put in of the same subject.
Yeah,
so you can stuff in more images of yourself and more whatever it is, and it will build a better world model, if you want, to use the term of art. And it will just be a better outcome.
We can also talk a bit more about the way to provide them all with your references. So we have the avatar workflow, which we'll be talking about more, that allows you to kind of like just one time take kind of photo of yourself and speak and get the sample, and then use it across different generations. So, but also you can bring 3 or 4 or even more, up to I think it's about 7 references of yours and voice references. And again, the more information that the model has, the more it can kind of like recreate and recontextualize the presence of the specific person or identity in a new scene. And I think what we've seen is that it's also not just the number of references, but also what information the references have. So for example, if I take a few photos of myself from different angles, the model can build a better understanding of the 3D structure of the face. And then if you walk around, then it will actually look more like you, right? Like if you only have a front photo of yourself, then when you turn around, it might look like a different person, because the model has no idea how you look from the side. So, it's also about that.
I think something important to point out is that these references don't have to be the same thing or person. So you could have like 2 people, or in this case, we saw like there was a wolf, but you could have even multiple animals, whatever you wanted. And then in your prompt, you just kind of point back to the things that you want to incorporate into the video, and it will just intuitively just figure out like what to do with those.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's look at some more demos. I feel like we've got lots of cool ones to look through.
We have an image of a violin on this background, which is just grass, and then we have a woman playing a violin. And the first prompt is basically take this violinist and transport her into this environment. So let's play that. Our next prompt is make the violin invisible and then keep everything else the same, right? So let's see what happens.
That's awesome. Wow.
It's really awesome because it keeps everything else the same. She looks the same, right? Like she's still playing, the music is the same, and then the violin just disappears and you see what happens. And then this next one is basically change the perspective. So you can see how this is useful for many different things, and it would have been really hard to do. And you can also see how the model just has an understanding of perspective and what happens when you change camera angles, right? So let's play this one. I do not play the violin, but I am told this looks right.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. Actually, really quickly on Multiturn, I think one of the pieces of like early feedback from the original Nano Banana models was sort of like when you do Multiturn, sometimes the model actually like wouldn't make the edits, as we see that feedback all the time from people, and sort of it's gotten progressively better. And I'm curious just to sort of like level set people's expectation as they go in and try this model. Like, is like pretty consistent, it'll make the changes that you want, or does it still have that like odd artifact that Nano Banana has sometimes where you'll ask for an edit and it'll end up just giving you the same image back without anything really changed?
It's less that. I think the main differences between Nano Banana and Omni here is obviously the generations take a lot longer, right? So with Nano Banana, it was super snappy. You have 10 seconds and you kind of get the output. Here, you're probably waiting like 60 seconds plus, sometimes 90. So it just, I think that naturally maybe limits how much you want to do multi-turn. But it definitely, I think the other thing is that we've seen this with Nano Banana too. Like, obviously, the longer you go, maybe the more like the instruction following degrades, and that's still true. But we've been getting kind of 2, 3, 4 turns pretty reliably with this model. But I think to your point, I think every time we introduce new capabilities like this, sometimes the model is better at following some instructions than others, right? So please send us feedback. I think we're all on Twitter. If we're not, we should be. And tag us and let us know what you like and don't like about this.
Don't tag me, tag them.
I don't know. Yeah. Maybe one limitation I have personally observed is that like sometimes editing will edit more than you asked for. Like I think it's almost the opposite of what you were asking me about kind of Nano Banana. It'll be like, and that's I don't know if it's we need to dig deeper into like in which way this is a problem, but like it's possible that like if you under specify what your edits is, the model will do more than you thought should be done. Right? You may be technically correct. It did what you did, but it also did some more. So.
When it comes to videos, there is so much happening, right? 10-second video, actually, a lot is happening.
Yeah.
And to be able to edit it accurately, even explain what you want is not like with language, not always very easy. So sometimes you might ask for something to change, but again, it is kind of like ill-defined what's the right thing to do, right? Editing is not like always clear. Okay, I want to change this text to something else, that's one thing. But if I want to change make it invisible, there are many ways, for example, like we've seen in this variant, to make it maybe invisible, like go change the camera position. There are multiple ways. So I think the more you're specifying what you want, I think the better the model can understand and try to implement the edit. But still, of course, it doesn't always get it right. And we're still working on getting it to be more and more accurate. Yeah.
How much reasoning is actually happening? Is that part of that like 90 seconds is like the model actually doing, or 60 seconds, the model's actually doing a bunch of reasoning similar to like the latter Nano Banana models where like that's like a core part of how we're getting model performance out of it?
Yeah, there is quite a bit of reasoning that goes on behind the scenes. I mean, if you think about like when you're doing text to video and you give it a simple prompt, as Shlomi said, there's a lot more going on in the video than just, like a dog on a skateboard or something like that. It's, well, where is the dog? What kind of time of the day is it, et cetera. And so the model really needs to create a lot of detail. And so it needs to reason about it, just like a kind of like a person creating a film would reason about, well, what's the story, what's going on.
And that's actually what's happening is it's like reasoning through like scene by scene or something like that, or I don't know how much of this is like the secret sauce or like how much actually is like actually even visible to users at all, but like what happens as it is like thinking through what the next 8 or 9 seconds of the video should look like.
If you provide a very short prompt, then there is so much to create to just give you kind of like the 10-second video, right? So a lot of this information is coming from the model thinking through how it should be, maybe split the 10 seconds or longer to kind of like shorter kind of like clips, what should happen in each one, how they should be consistent with each other. So there are a lot of planning around that, and then eventually the video that you get kind of like try to combine all of this information that's are in this planning into kind of like coherent video. So if you provide more information, for example, and one thing that I like is that you can actually say, I want in specific time, specific seconds for something to happen, then you constrain much more the video, right? So if you provide more information, the model will try and adhere to what the user wants. And then if you provide less, then it has to go and be more of a director on your behalf.
Nice. I'm curious, why 10 seconds? Is it just like the model has gotten better and more coherent, or like architecturally it's set up to do 10 seconds, or like why 10 seconds? Why not 30? I know 30 seconds would take a long time to generate.
With Omni, you can create 10 seconds videos, that's true. But because of the consistency that using references, you can easily have the same basically characters in a 10-second video. So you can easily create a much longer film. That being said, we are definitely planning to extend that in the near future.
We really try to focus on making this accessible to consumers with this release. I think that's quite new because with VO, we really focus on kind of professional creators and filmmakers. And we're still working with those, obviously, because everything that we've shown you is useful if you're creating content professionally. But we really wanted to make this tech accessible to consumers. So the fact that you can create your avatar and then you can put yourself in videos and it looks like you, like that's kind of that nano banana moment for video, right? Shorter videos we also think are kind of more conducive to the consumer use cases, but we are planning on enabling longer videos. And one interesting thing is when we talk to folks who are creating films professionally, they actually prefer to have shorter scenes because you kind of create a scene and then you stack those scenes. So like the workflow that Shlomi described is actually quite common in the industry, but you're right, like we do want to make longer videos and that's definitely on the roadmap.
There's also kind of a user experience, like, imagine doing a multi-turn edit of a 90-second video. Most users will just not find this very pleasant, but we could do it as a flag planting thing if you want.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
One of the things actually that we haven't talked about, and this related to like use cases and sort of the different audiences and everything they're looking for, maybe we can actually just talk about availability for a second, which is like for people trying to do the sort of nano banana VO moment, where should they be going for sort of the more professional user who wants to do the 10-second many iterations, put together something professional, where should they be going? Availability.
For easy consumer use cases, go to the Gemini app. So it's available to Ultra and Pro and Plus users.
Really? Nice.
Yes.
That's where all the TPUs are going. Now it makes sense.
No, but actually, like this is related, right? Because if we do longer video generations, then we can serve it to fewer people, right? Sure. So this is definitely a trade-off that we thought about with this model. But yes, go to the Gemini app. For people who have much more kind of intensive workflows and who want to really like use a full-on creative suite, go to Flow. You can use Nano Banana to create references, characters. You can give your characters voices so they're kind of consistent throughout the project that you're working on. And you can use, Omni in Flow for all of those creations. Flow now has some really cool features where they also have like an agentic workflow that can suggest you ideas. Cool. It's very cool, actually. Shout out to the Flow team and Josh, where, an agent can suggest you ideas on what to do. I usually don't have good ideas on what to do, so I just use the agent to tell me what to do there, and that's really fun. And then we're also, I think for the first time, also sim shipping this model with YouTube. And so if you go on YouTube Shorts or YouTube Create on YouTube Shorts, basically some videos will be eligible to be remixed with Omni, and then you can kind of go in and edit those.
Very cool. Nice.
And then we will have APIs and, other
developer access soon.
Coming soon.
Fingers crossed. I'm excited.
User experience of creating videos, it's not a sole thing, and it really depends on what the user is trying to do. So I find myself using both the Gemini app for some things when I just want something to create quickly, maybe some memes send to someone, maybe I want to take my my video and just change something small, make it funny and send to a friend or my family. But then if I want to try and create, it's not like I'm an amazing film
amateur.
We've seen some of your films.
But yes. But my kids like it, and so so it can be professional, but it can also be like maybe more of like a longer workflow when you have some idea and you want to get it out, and actually create it. Then I think there are amazing improvements to Flow and to the kind of like user experience there. You can build those characters and give them a voice, and then use them in different scenes. So the ability to create a much longer film or kind of like a video, I think it's just a better workflow for that. Yeah. So we believe those both kind of like use cases are very different and require different experiences.
What about and actually maybe we go to the next demo, but I'm also curious to plant the seed for like multi-human video generation and editing, and I'm curious how the model does like with character consistency. As like is the suggestion like 2 people, it's like pretty reasonably good, you get to 5, it starts to break down and things get crazy, or like, and I feel like it was the same for Nano Banana for like editing. If you had like a group photo was like one example that I felt like didn't work on the initial iteration of the model, and you sort of needed to have like 1 person or 2 people. Same vibe for Omni to start, or is it can it handle it all?
I've seen pretty impressive examples of 2 characters and maybe stretching it to 3. Again, you do have to provide quite a few references, right? So like the more image references you provide for each character and the better you get all of their facial angles so that you can kind of capture the movement, the better things get. But like 2 to 3, pretty good. I think once you go to like a big group photo and then you try to animate it or like it starts to drift much, much faster. And even if I use like a single headshot of me and then I try to put myself in a scene, like it doesn't quite look like me. But if I do the like, side profile from both sides and kind of head on, it's so much better.
And can those references be videos? Could you do the like, you look at the camera side to side, up, down, like
It will be.
It will be coming soon? Nice.
It's just, it's a
The
matter
model
of
can do it, we run out of
Actually
time.
one of our
Yeah. The model can do much more than we're actually
we
shipping.
like to say we're going to
today.
take us like 2 months at least to ship all of the features.
Yeah,
It has a lot,
We packed a lot into a small model, and I think this is actually part of why it's called Gemini Omni Flash. Like, it's actually really impressive. It is a pretty small model. We're packing a lot of features, and we have more coming. So
We kind of knew this when we were developing the model, but we were developing something that we didn't know how to serve quite yet. And so we're kind of like slowly unrolling this as we figure out, well, how do we actually want to let users interact with it, or allow users to interact with it. One thing I would say is that the character generation, especially from like T to V, is quite good for like 4 or 5 characters. I think the one thing that is an area to improve upon is voice generation. So once you go beyond like 2 characters, what you might start seeing is that the same person might be talking. Like it kind of gets confused between who should be talking exactly when. And this is obviously an area that we want to improve upon.
I love it. So our podcasting with 5 people, we're good. It's
but you're still good.
we're still good now,
still
but
good.
if it's only just 2
Don't do
people,
two.
don't do 2. It's a matter of time. Let's watch some more
Let's go
demos.
to the next one. This is another example of just multi-turn of kind of like impossible worlds that you can have in the palm of your hand. Let's do it.
Oh, wow.
I love this. It looks like that little world orb thing from Project Genie.
And it's just so much
Same
more
vibe.
accurate. Like we tested all of these against VO, and you can really see the step change from where we were with VO. So it's pretty exciting. If you go to the next one, this is just Celestial Worlds. It's basically a play on the same idea.
5 fingers.
5 fingers.
That looks like a good hand.
Success.
That's a good hand. Very cool.
And then we have another one.
That's very cool.
Very
Very
timely.
cool.
The text rendering, I think, is really something that we love. That I think it's in text rendering, we really feel like it's a step change comparing to our previous video models, and it's so useful because text apparently is pretty useful. So like for anything informational, or even if you just want to make some fun message to someone, like being able to have text on screen
Or adding an overlay with video.
Or, it's just really and of course like the text. I think we have some examples, right? That the text is in the right place. It looks like you can read it. It looks correct, and like I think this is super like a useful kind of capability that we are improving. And in a way, that's coming from this Omni approach because the model learns all of modalities, including text, from the ground up. So it can actually do much better on text generation thanks to that.
I feel like this Omni model has to be like the hardest example of taking like all of these different things and bringing them together. And I'm curious sort of like actually just like how we think about prioritizing, like what do we want to be good? Was it actually like initially we were like, hey, video, the Nano Banana moment was incredible. We think we could do something really, really interesting for video. And so like, let's go and try to make sure that that use case works really well to begin with, and then sort of keep hill climbing everything else to like try to get quality up? Or is it like you just sort of throw it all together and then do a bunch of evals and play around with it? And you're like, actually video editing is the thing that works best.
We definitely started like the tagline of the project, which started a while ago, was Nano Banana for video, right? That was there in the slides ever since the beginning of the project.
Yeah.
And so this was definitely sort of a North Star there. Doesn't mean that we didn't do the other thing where you said where like we just put everything together and hope that it works, but like it was definitely a sort of a where we wanted to go to. So and we've arrived, but like I think it's definitely an open problem of how to put everything together, right? Like in a way that like gets you to that desired outcome, because Nano Banana for video kind of we all feel it, we sort of understand what that means.
Yeah.
But like actually practically measuring, are we improving towards that goal? It's not super obvious, right? Like, like there's just a lot to video editing that is not just quantified in a single number. They can hill climb on.
For us, like execution is really key, and we're researchers, so we incrementally added these things and layered everything on top of each other. And of course, everything interacts with each other. I think one of the most difficult parts of this particular model was just the number of evaluations that we had to run, especially towards the end when we just had everything going in. So we had editing, references, image out, text out, etc. We just had to evaluate everything and then kind of just understand what's going on. And you see some things regress, some things improve, knowing when the trade-offs are, where those trade-offs are. It's really challenging. You need a very deep intuition on how these models work and what's going to work at scale and what just isn't.
First, it builds on I think like long-term research that we've been doing I think for a few years to how to combine modalities. And as you've mentioned, this is being a North Star for Gemini and kind of like our generative media projects to see how we can combine the modalities together. An interesting is that as you combine the different modalities, you have to decide to prioritize which one is more important, or like how do we weigh them in a way that gets us the what we want the model to be able to excel in. And that's something we definitely worked on a lot. The interesting thing is that we see that putting some of the modalities together actually helps it, like different modalities, because there is a lot shared. For example, for image generation and video generation, there are a lot of similarities of generation of the visual stuff, right? Understanding the visual world. Same goes for music and audio. You can imagine that if you ask for music to be generated in a video, then the model has to know how to create the music to begin with. So we also see that this information helps the model on the kind of to do better on videos when it has, like, for example, audio and music information. So overall, we see that all of those modalities kind of like make the model better across the board, of course, with the right adjustments. Yeah.
Historically, we actually talked about for Nano Banana that like Kaushik and others had like, trying to like the text rendering quality is like an overall metric that you can sort of like track correlated with quality of the model in general. And I'm curious if that's been true for Omni as this like text rendering capability has gotten so good. And then actually also like the tool calling capability of the model. And obviously the latter versions of Nano Banana that you can use search out of the box and has, I think, like image search, which is really cool and has like made that experience powerful. And I'm curious like how much that's the like tool use for the Omni model is something that either works today or is like something that y'all are pushing towards in the future.
It works today, but that's for certain. But it's definitely something we're pushing on as well.
I think what you've seen with Nano Banana kind of generally, right? Like we kind of started with a lot of the fun use cases of like edit an image of me and make me a mini figurine, right? And then we kind of went to like, actually, you can make an infographic and like use it for a work presentation on whatnot, right? Or you can use it to kind of explain a really difficult concept to someone. And I think you're kind of seeing us do that with video now too, where like we're starting with a lot of these fun things, but then you're like, oh, it's actually also useful because I take a video on vacation and like somebody walks in and then maybe I just want to remove them. In the past, most people would have never learned the professional tools to be able to do those kinds of things, right? So I think we're in that stage and we're seeing kind of the early glimpses of like, well, actually, now you have text rendering working. And then when we add in the grounding and actual real information, right, we're also launching kind of Street View grounding with Genie at I/O this year, right? So you can kind of see how you can ground in a lot of this real information. It just makes the models much more useful. It's definitely where we're going.
I think it connects ultimately, to Google's mission of organizing the world's information, and we really see how there are like really cool applications that are more on the informational side and less on the kind of like entertainment side, which of course is interesting as well. But really on the information side, we feel like we're just the tip of what we can do.
It works really well, despite not having poured like super many resources into it. So I think that's, and I'm actually quite excited to see, is there anything else that we haven't discovered, right? So people will discover like the mini figurines or whatever it is that people have done with Nano Banana. Like I'm sure people will do similar interesting things with Omni when it ships. So and when they try it.
those Yeti selfie vlogs or whatever. I'm like, now you can just be an influencer without actually having to go. Just send my avatar out and go explore the world.
This example actually is also really cool. I've really loved examples that people have been doing of kind of like you take footage of the real world and then you do something like crazy fantastical in that world. So this is an example of like a person's just drawing a circle on a piece of paper and then you like turn it into all these wild things. So this is a circle turning into a black hole.
Black hole or DeepMind logo.
Wow, that's awesome.
Don't try it.
Yeah, don't try that at home.
One thing that we really like about model is that it can do style, kind of like changing the style of a video, and that's something that we don't have any such data in when we train the model, right? Like it's very hard to have like a video in one style and then a video in another style. Like that's not something that you can easily find. But the model just kind of like generalized, and because it has a deep understanding of different types of medias and styles and language, and you can just say, okay, I want to have this video in different style, and now edit it to, and then it will just kind of like learn to change the style in a way that looks reasonable. So here, for example, we asked basically the model to change the style throughout the video, and you can say, oh, the scene remains consistent, but the style just changes throughout.
And I think this is interesting just for video editing in general, right? Because there's so many different kinds of edits that you can do. And I think we weren't sure what exactly the model was going to pick up on, but it actually like is very versatile. Like we have an amazing group of people who have been making demos for the past couple of weeks. And I've been really blown away with like all the kinds of things that they have been able to do, of like turning themselves into crochet dolls and like liquefying things, and like those things, and they just work, and it's all through prompting, which is pretty incredible.
Something I was really impressed with was actually in an early iteration of the video, right after we kind of like recently allowed it to do video edits. I was looking at some evaluation prompts, and I saw this one prompt. Well, most of them kind of like asked for like these kind of modifications to the scene, but I saw this one prompt that asked for the next scene. And the video just flawlessly executed it. It continued the story. There's a woman walking down a corridor, and then it asked for a monster to come out of a door, and then the camera turned around the corner, and it just continued and did it. And that was not something we had ever kind of explicitly trained for. And that's actually something that you can do today, which is pretty cool.
I feel like this is like an interesting like new form of like media that doesn't really exist, which is this like you have those like choose your own adventure books growing up that you read or whatever. And it's like you can kind of do that now with Omni, but in video format in like a much more engaging way, which I think is really, really interesting.
I think the way that we generally think about media now is it's different people learn through different ways, right? And a lot of people are visual learners, right? And so I've had a lot of people come up to me after Nano Banana saying like, oh, my dad, is a chemistry professor and I have no idea what he does. And so I just like took all his lectures, fed it into Nano Banana, and got these like sketch notes that just visually explain it to me, because that's how I learn, right? And it was the first time that I was able to have a conversation with my dad in like 20 years about what he does, right? And it was like a real bonding moment for that family. And so I think with, again, with video, some people may understand concept better through video, or some concepts are better explained through a video because you need to kind of see the motion and the transition. So one of the really exciting things, and I think we have a protein folding example, very on brand, is you can kind of explain things in different styles, right? You can kind of adjust it to different audiences. And so I think one of the things we're all really excited about is just like a new tool for learning, right? Because like a kid was going to learn differently than I'm going to learn about protein folding. And so we have one example here.
Proteins start as chains of amino acids. They fold into patterns like the alpha helix, and flat sections called beta sheets, forming a perfect three-dimensional shape.
I need to extend this video a few times.
We're gonna have to. This is when extension comes.
Yeah.
You can go deeper.
This is where like the promise of longer videos is gonna sort of hold, and it's gonna be more useful than just all arbitrarily generate something very long for no good reason. Like I think generating longer videos that explain things, that are educational, that create bonding moments, I think that'll be very cool.
I also feel like this with this like educational type of content with style transfer is also really interesting, because it's like, oh, I can sort of make it, whatever, comic book themed or whatever it is, and you can sort of bring it to life in different ways, and not like if you don't want this like claymation animation style or whatever it is.
I had a physics teacher that like he loved kind of bringing memes and kind of things from like my generation into the classroom, and that really it helped. Like it made it a lot more engaging, and so you can imagine like a teacher bringing videos in and like really engaging the students a lot more with those.
Yeah, it's really, I think it's really like promising as a tool for educators to and teachers to be able to kind of bring a concept, an idea, and kind of like whatever they can explain whatever they want, but in a visual way that would really match kind of like their audience, right? So it's like explain to me like I'm 5 or explain to me like I like memes. The medium is basically matching the audience, and I think we can go much deeper in that.
It's somewhat obvious, but it's also worth like for folks who have like tried to make even this type of like basic, like I've done this a bunch for like programming stuff, and it's like extremely time, and it's like I want so much to do it because like the end product I think is like great for people. It's just like super laborious. It's not what brings energy in my life, and like I feel like there's so many cases now where I think like folks are going to get their hands on Omni and like go and make a bunch of this content, which is going to be great for other people. And it just wouldn't have existed otherwise because like they don't have the time, means, money, whatever it is in order to do it. And now you can get a Gemini Pro subscription and sort of you're off to the races and can go and use those, which is really cool. So it's awesome.
So we have another demo where we basically show any modality in. So we have some images, we have audio references, we have a video. If you remember the sailor from last year's I.O., he got very famous on Twitter. We show him all the time in our review decks. And so we have an example of taking a style of a storybook and then the sailor from last year and his voice, and we've got a new track for you.
The sea is a wild, untamed might. She commands your awe.
Very cool. I feel like I need more. I'm like, give me another 20 seconds.
We'll give
me another 20 seconds.
Give you more. We hear that.
And so actually, just for this example, this was like the references for this sailor at the sea was like the previous like a screenshot of what it was before. What's the
previous year's video with that audio track. So it was basically what he said in this video is exactly what he was saying in the original video. Except He was kind of like looking at into the sea, into the distance. And then we had a style reference image that went into this. We've got one more example. Where you gave us your permission to use your
Sammy took this picture.
To use your likeness.
I did not know what it was for originally, but I did consent.
Sammy, you did
blindly.
consent to your picture being taken, and we have a demo of your Tron.
Nice.
Gemini.
That's pretty uncanny. That looks pretty on brand, honestly.
I mean, I think I can see your next Twitter post.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's have one more.
Okay.
Video. Let's take a look.
I've been working on training this new model on my likeness and voice. It is Google's new Omni model, and the results are pretty wild. Does it actually sound like me? It is hard to tell.
Does it pass
What do
the
you
Logan
think?
test?
Yeah, that passes the test.
Yeah.
Throw back to my old apartment. I miss it. The first one was very, very, very good. I think first one was A+. I think second one was like A.
So in that case, how many images?
I think we use multiple photos to get
Sammy
your
did
likeness.
take
some
side profile
This is
shots.
you need the side profile shots that actually, like, when you move, it kind of looks like you. But I will say, even evaluating yourself is sometimes very hard, especially on your voice, because you like don't usually listen to yourself speaking. So to Shlomi's point, like it's actually really helpful to just see like other people on the team. And then you look at if the model is good at, reproducing their like.
Logan may be uniquely qualified because he does listen to himself a lot.
Unfortunately, I have to hear myself talk. Maybe this is actually a great transition to talk just generally about like safety for this model. Obviously, the capability is super interesting. Obviously, generating things with people's likenesses, I'm sure there's many challenges product model wise to sort of handle. So would love to talk about sort of at a high level, like what are the things we're thinking about, anything that folks should know as they sort of get their hands on Omni.
There's obviously a lot of new things that you can do with this model, right? Including edit videos, which includes speech, including, using voice and audio references. And so we are actually going out pretty conservative when we first release this model. And you might feel like we're blocking a lot of things. And part of the reason is because we really are trying to learn what people will do with this model. and kind of just really look at like real world use cases, because we have some idea of what people will do, both kind of positive and negative, but we really need to see what happens when we release the model in the real world. And so we are taking a pretty conservative approach. For your own voice and your own likeness right now, you can only do it through the avatar flow. And we will monitor the feedback. Please do send us feedback on what you think should be working and isn't right now. And we will adjust as we go, but we really kind of want to learn and get the feedback from users so that we can both kind of deploy this responsibly, but also give people kind of creative control over what they want to do, which is the balance that we try to strike every time.
I don't think we've mentioned yet the sort of avatar flow and just like the really quick TLDR for folks who want to go do actually with their own likeness, create some sort of video.
Yeah, so this is also part kind of a convenience thing, because I think as we've been talking about this, in order to capture your likeness, you really do have to take kind of multiple shots of your face. We need an audio clip. And so the avatar flow is kind of a one-time setup that you can go through in all of the products that we're launching in, actually. So YouTube Flow and the Gemini app. And basically, you record yourself speaking. So you speak out, a set of numbers out loud. We capture your visual likeness on camera, and then you basically store your avatar and you can invoke it the next time you come into the product. So it both has this sort of safety element, but it also has the convenience element of you just have to do it once, and then you can reuse your avatar every single time that you come into the product.
I think synth ID and the ability to know if video is basically generated, I think it's really key, because we see that the capabilities of models across the board get better and better. They look very real. We can have someone's identity very carefully kind of like replicated, and that's obviously poses a challenge. And I think ultimately part of releasing this responsibly is that all of our videos are always embedded with the synth ID, basically that watermark that says that it is possible to know this video is generated. And then on various surfaces like Chrome and Gemini app and others, users can check if a video that they have or received was generated by our models. And we think that this is basically probably one of the most important ways to know that content is generated, and you should know if you want to trust it or not based on that information. Yeah.
And just in that, so we're obviously very proud of Synth ID, which is a tool that we've developed, but we also partner with C2PA, and we embed C2PA metadata in all of our content, so then if people want to check it on other platforms, they also can do that.
And so, synth ID, it persists across edits as well, and if people make modifications in post as well. And I just want, so everyone knows, like, the way to use it is you upload a video to the Gemini app. You can ask, is this an AI generated video? And it will check that for you.
I love it. Well, this was awesome. A lot to look forward to. A lot to sort of hopefully get the feedback. Y'all are all over the internet. Please send us feedback about sort of the models and what doesn't work. What maybe we can also just talk for a second before we close about what comes next. Obviously, Omni Flash. Hopefully we'll have a pro model, but like anything that y'all are like especially excited for in the next iterations of the model?
Personally, I'm really excited about pushing the envelope on what's possible in across quality-wise, the duration of videos.
You're excited about everything.
Everything, but specifically, I really would love to see people being able to create kind of like to tell stories. I think that's something that we've seen that with our previous models. It was pretty difficult, like to actually tell a story that something happens and then something else happens and things remain consistent. And we think we made progress, and we hope to make even more progress towards that. So that can apply to filmmaking, to informational kind of like videos, and I'm the most excited about that. And I'm personally also excited about being able to have more interactive versions of our models. So we hope to have some of that in the future.
I'm really excited about like being able to deliver factual and information content. So I think like if you think about kind of like the progress of video models over time, as they become better at grounding and these better world models, you go from enabling people to generate things that are really entertaining and engaging videos to things that people can use for learning and kind of information delivery. And I think that we're going to be able to really push the envelope there in the next generation.
I love it.
This kind of technology will empower kind of a new generation of YouTubers, I think, of like, just content creators that will hopefully build interesting kind of, educational, informational, whatever they are, things. I'm also actually excited about like new emerging capabilities. Like I don't think we've demoed this here, but like we've discovered that the model is pretty good at synchronizing music to video. So you can like, add sort of, create videos that respond to music. Again, not something that we'd like trained for specifically, right? Like I'm wondering what other things will people discover this way? What other things is this model capable of? And then maybe we can double down on that, in the pro version, whenever that comes.
When we talk about these Omni models, I think there are interesting ways in which the modalities can interact that we haven't really, I think, fully discovered yet. So like, you can iterate on a storyboard in images and you can like design your character before you ever go into video generation. And I think we're kind of just scratching the surface on that. And that's going to be a really interesting way, I think, to see people interact with these models. And so I'm excited about, what's to come on that over the coming months.
I'm also excited. This is going to be great. Well, thank all of you for taking the time to sit down, for building a cool model. All the other teams across Google who sort of made this launch possible. I think there's probably like hundreds and hundreds of people in sort of collaboration, from serving to training to research to all the product work to bring all these things to life. So yeah, a great Google team effort. Thank you all for sitting down, and thanks everyone for tuning into this episode of Release Notes. We'll see you in the next one.